कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम 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 हरे Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandava Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada. So, thank you for joining us in the reading of Ocean of Mercy. So, we begin our session now. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swami Niti Namine Snigdha Cheta Supraneta Vagmilam Chara Saputam Prabhupada Gat Prana Nami Bhakti Charu. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine नमस्ते सारस्वते देव गौरवाणी प्रचारणे विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे कृष्णा. So welcome to our evening session of reading Ocean of Mercy, and so those who wish to read, please raise your hand on the app, so then I will request turn by turn. Okay. So first we have Vijay Mataji. Okay. Then Mr. Sham Prabhu. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. नेक्स्ट से शुरू करना है ना. नेक्स्ट आई वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड.
ये next I will introduce. Yes, mother.
हाँ जी.
Yes.
Next, I was introduced to a young Italian brahmachari named Madhu Sevita Dasa, who served as a temple commander, like a military commander. He appeared grave and severe, stern, which I thought was quite befitting. He was responsible for assigning service to devotees, and the first service he gave me was to help cook khichdi, a mix of grains, dal, and vegetables that was distributed every afternoon to local villagers as part of a food distribution program. When I went to the kitchen and reported to the elderly Bengali devotee in charge of cooking, he examined me from head to toe. I could I could tell he was not impressed. He took me out back, pointed pointed to a pile of firewood, directed me to bring the wood to the kitchen and left. He had not told me how much to bring, so I just kept carrying one armful of wood after another. And by the time he returned, half of the kitchen was filled. He gave me a disapproving, disgusted look and told me to take most of the wood back to the pile. Then he led me to the storeroom, asked me to bring bags of rice and dal to the kitchen, and again disappeared. The bags must have weighed 100 kilos each. There was no way I could even pick them up, let alone carry them to the kitchen. So I got hold of a bag and started to drag it across the floor. But along the way, became stuck between the staircase and a pillar. I pulled as hard as I could to dislodge it, but it would not be budge. And when I gave it one last heave, the bag broke and dal scattered all over the floor. Just then, of course, the managing devotee returned. When he saw the mess I had made, he became so ex- exas- exasperated that he did not say a thing. He just gave me that look again, letting me know without words. Then he thought I was the most useless person he had ever met. My fumbling attempt at service, I felt, had caused only disappointment to the devotees. That was the beginning of my spiritual life in Mayapur. The next day, I was assigned to go out into a field with few other devotees and cut the grass. Finally, I thought a service I could execute without trouble. But when Bhavnanda Maharaj heard that I had been assigned to do, he got upset and chastised Madhu Sevita for engaging me in such a menial task. Madhu Sevita came to me and apologized. He told me that there was a practice that when someone joined the temple, he was given various tough jobs to test his sincerity. I said that I actually liked the idea. I was starting my new life and I was prepared to accept any service I was given. It was one of my first lessons in Krishna consciousness that our life is meant for serving and pleasing Krishna. Our understanding lasted only so long. However, in one afternoon, when Madhu Sevita found me reading in the library, he ordered me to go out and do something. I knew that everyone was allowed to take some rest in the afternoon. So I told him that I was reading and would prefer to continue to do so. If he could not find anyone for the work, I would do it later. Perhaps no one had ever responded to Madhu Sevita in such a way, especially a newcomer. He flared up, calling me the most arrogant person ever. I did not argue but walked right up to the Bhavananda Maharaj's room and told him about how I had been treated here. Bhavananda immediately went down and again chastised Madhu Sevita, who became embarrassed and said that Satadhanya Swami had told him to keep me constantly engaged so that I would not have any time to slip into the Maya, the illusory aspect of the Lord's energy that takes one away from him. So then Bhavnanda called Sardhanya and blasted him too. asking whether he thought he was running a Nazi concentration camp. From then on, things went more smoothly. The devotees all seemed favorably disposed towards me. I was getting closer with all of them, and Madhu Sevita and I were becoming good friends. He was a sincere and serious devotee with an upright and straightforward manner, and he did not waste any time. His commitment to Srila Prabhupada was obvious, and he was completely focused on his service. Initially, Bhavananda Goswami seemed quite exalted and unapproachable, but in time I became close with him as well. He was an impressive, vibrant personality, and with his powerful build and booming voice, he was a natural leader who inspired spontaneous administration and respect. He was older than most of the other devotees, and whereas most had rather bohemian and carefree backgrounds, he had been a well established and prominent figure in New York fashion and film. Just a brief encounter with Srila Prabhupada had led him to surrender and change his life. I still did not have a study service, so devotees from different departments would invite me to serve with them. S- Satvika Dasa, a young Italian who took care of the cows in the Goshala, the cow barn, invited me to join him. I loved the idea, but I also knew that caring for the cows was one of the most coveted services. So I asked Bhavananda Maharaj, but he said that I was not really meant for that kind of service. I was disappointed, but I accepted his decision. Then, then Hiranya Garbhadasa, the head of the Gurukula, the children's school, and his assistant Nadia Dasa invited me to come teach with them. Again, I went to Bhavananda Maharaj and requested the posting, but again he said that the service was not right for me. And again I was disappointed. Teaching, I thought, was the best service for me, but he considered me unqualified for it. My pride was wounded, and I protested. Do you think I am good for nothing? Any service that I am proposing, you think I am unfit for it? It is not a matter of your qualification. Maharaj shocked back. When you see that the students are a bunch of village kids who pass urine in their beds and that the classroom stinks, I am afraid your idealistic dream will be shattered. I had a roommate, Tirtha Tirthapada Dasa, an extremely serious young American devotee. He never wasted a minute. If he had any free time, he would read Srila Prabhupada books, and he took prasad only after he had finished his chanting and his prescribed 16 rounds of the Mahamantra, which took almost 2 hours. I was glad to be roaming with such a committed devotee.
Hare
My
Krishna.
biggest
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Mata.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. So next we have Shashank Prabhu, Shashank Chaitanya Prabhu. You can go ahead.
Yes, sir. My biggest challenge was getting up early every morning. At home, I rarely got up before 8, but in Mayapur, everyone was expected to rise before 4 and attend Manga Aarti at 4:30. Tirthpad and got up every day by 3:30 and would wake me up before going to bed. When he returned to the room, he would often find me still lying in bed and have to urge me to get up. I would beg him to let me sleep just a little longer, but he would grab the end of my mattress and lift it with me still on it, and I would have to jump out to avoid falling on the floor. Both of us laughing all the while. Tirthpal and his brother had joined ISKCON together, but his brother had recently left the movement, and he was sad about that. He was very affectionate with me, as if he was trying to recover his lost brother by fixing me up in Krishna consciousness. Life in Mayapur was very simple in those days. Everyone, irrespective of age, nationality, or possession, attended Mangla Aarti, chanted their rounds in the temple room, and then attended Shringar Aarti, Guru Puja, and Srimad Bhagavatam class. We were all engaged in service throughout the day, except when the afternoons got too hot, in which case we would stay indoors and read from Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada's summary study of the Bhagavatam's 10th canto. In the evening, we would attend Sandhya Aarti and Bhagavad Gita class, and after prasad, we would often sit up late into the night, sharing our experiences and realizations in Krishna consciousness. After the morning Bhagavatam class, we would have a simple breakfast of khichdi and a vegetable preparation. For a time after I arrived, the next meal wasn't until 5 p.m. But at some point, Bhavananda Maharaj saw that the gap between meals was too long and arranged for a lunch to be served at 1:30. When everyone would sit together on the veranda of the kitchen for vegetables, dal, and fresh hot chapatis, a sumptuous meal that felt like a real luxury. There were several excellent female cooks including Kishori Vallabha Dasi and Devima, an elderly widow from a high-class Bengali family. All the sweets for the deities were made by Vrindavan Vilasini Dasi, a South African devotee who had settled in Mayapur and mastered the art of preparing Indian sweets, which were usually offered before Mangla Aarti and at night before the deities were put to rest. The most delicious food was the Mahaprasad from the evening offering. After being offered to the deities, it was transferred to a large plate and brought to the three resident sannyasis, Jayapataka Maharaj, Bhavananda Maharaj, and Satadhanya Maharaj. Once they were served, the plate would be brought down to the conference room by Madhusevita Das and distributed to the rest of us, who, after the Gita class, would circle around, eagerly awaiting our shares. One evening, the Mahaprasad did not arrive. After waiting for what seemed like a very long time, we went upstairs to investigate. On the top floor, we found Madhusevita sitting on the back balcony, helping himself. We all had a hearty laugh, and after that, he always brought the plate down immediately after the sannyasis were served. There was only one complete structure in Mayapur at the time, the Lotus Building. The temple room was on the ground floor, a conference room, a few offices, and the deity kitchen were on the next floor. Srila Prabhupada's quarters and a room for his secretary and servant were above that, and the top floor held a few rooms for guests. On the roof were two large rooms for Jayapataka Maharaj and Bhavananda Maharaj. The rest of the Mayapur compound was still undeveloped. We lived in rows of rooms along the front boundary wall on either side of the main gate. There were no bathrooms. Our only shower was a set of 4 hand pumps on a cemented area in the middle of the open field, and the toilets were holes in the ground surrounded by walls of jute cloth on wooden frames. The area was full of poisonous snakes, vipers, cobras, and kraits. Just walking to the pumps and toilets, one risked death at every step. When Mayapur flooded, the water rose to 10 feet and the snakes came out from their holes and swam and slithered around railings, gates, trees, and even into the buildings, everywhere. Wanting to get rid of the snakes, one devotee, Pradyumna Das from Orissa, started killing them. He killed over 50 and would have slain more if we had not stopped him. Then one day, a devotee saw Pradyumna walking along a veranda with a cobra following behind. The smooth cement floor slowed down the snake, so the devotee was able to stop it. But had he not, Pradyumna would have been bitten. Cobra were extremely vengeful, I was told. They could look into a dead companion's eye and see the identity of its killer, and then go after him.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shashank Prabhu. So next we have Radha Premprad Mataji. And those who have not raised the hand, can please, those who want to read, please raise the hand so we can call you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I was standing on the back veranda one day when I saw a large black cobra sliding across the paved drive. Suddenly, a mongoose ran out and confronted it. As soon as the snake saw the mongoose, it hissed and spread his hood. For a few seconds, the two faced off, almost motionless, but then the snake turned and slipped away into the rice paddy, the mongoose in close pursuit. Another devotee, Siddhanath Das, a tall, quite frail-bodied American, was terrified of snakes. He would imagine that there were snakes in his room even during the day. Among a small group of us in his room, one morning Bhavanand Maharaj told him, Sitanath, if you are so afraid of snakes, you will never make it to the spiritual world because there Anantashesh is a snake. I couldn't gauge Sitanath's reaction to Maharaj's statement, but I benefited immensely from then on. Whenever I saw a snake or even thought of one, Anantashesh came to the forefront of my mind. Somehow, none of the devotees were ever bitten, and even in the austere conditions of the weather, the snakes, and the accommodations, we were quite content and enthusiastic in our Krishna consciousness. After some time, I was finally assigned a service that was approved to help Pancharatna Das, a dynamic young American who was supervising construction of the long building named for being at 750 feet, the longest building in West Bengal, which would have 165 rooms to accommodate visiting devotees. I paired up with his assistant, a Canadian devotee named Bhuma Das, to buy materials in Calcutta, receive train deliveries of building materials, and deal with local government officials to get clearances. When I was free from service and had the time, I would go to different Gaudiya Maths, ashrams in other Vaishnava organizations to meet Srila Prabhupada's God brothers and other advanced devotees. I wanted to find out more about him and about Vaishnavas and Krishna consciousness. During one such visit to the Devanand Gaudiya Math in Navadip, I discovered some of Prabhupada's early Bengali writings in their monthly magazine, Gaudiya Patrika, which he had edited in the late 40s and early 50s. Prabhupada had written several series of articles for the magazine, the first of which was entitled Bhagwanir Katha, Knowledge of the Supreme, in response to an editorial in a popular English daily, the Amrit Bazar Patrika. The author of the editorial had stated that although India had become independent from British rule, the country's situation had not improved, as if in the dispensation of providence, mankind could not have any rest. Srila Prabhupada countered that real peace and prosperity could not be achieved by political or other material arrangements. The only way to achieve real peace was to surrender to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His argument was brilliant, and I could see that even in 1948, when Prabhupada was still a householder, he was already perfectly situated in his conviction and pure devotion. After consulting with Pancharatna and Jayapataka Maharaj, I decided to compile Srila Prabhupada's articles in a book, which came to 64 pages. Bhagwanir Katha, words about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So things were going well, but I very much wanted to meet Srila Prabhupada. I loved hearing stories about him. One devotee, Kamal Narayan Das, was a middle-aged, educated Bengali gentleman who one day had just happened to hear Srila Prabhupada at a program in Calcutta. He had been so impressed that he had handed his business over to his son, made him promise that he would take care of his mother, and left home to join ISKCON. He had just immediately surrendered. Kamal Narayan told me about how loving and caring Srila Prabhupada was. When Prabhupada had learned that Kamal Narayan had left his family to join ISKCON, he had become so concerned about Kamal Narayan's wife that whenever he would meet him, he would ask how she was. Kamal Narayan also told me how much he admired the dedication, love, and loyalty the Western devotees had for Srila Prabhupada. If Prabhupada asked me to jump from a skyscraper, Kamal Narayan said they would do it without batting an eyelash. One especially dynamic group of devotees was the Namahatas, led by Guru Kripa Swami. They were a boisterous bunch of about 15, mostly Americans, who had come from preaching in Japan, and just their presence brought an infectious vibrancy to Mayapur's normally quiet atmosphere. When they danced during Kirtan, the entire temple reverberated with ecstasy.
Hare Krishna.
Many
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you
Thank
so much. Okay. Next we have Shashi Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Many of us would go to the nearby bank of Ganga together, and sometimes there would be wrestling matches between Namahatha and Mayapur devotees. One day I had to wrestle one of the Namahathas, and when he defeated me quite easily, his group cheered in jubilation. Jayaprataka Maharaj was watching. However, he would not accept the humiliation. He sprang up like a lion and roared a challenge to anyone who would dare face him. For a moment, there was total silence. Then Guru Kripa Swami gestured to one of his men, a tall, powerful-looking devotee, an appropriate match for Maharaj, to take up the challenge. It was quite a sight. Jayaprataka Maharaj looked like he had been empowered by some special potency, and after a bit of grapplings, he simply picked up the devotee and smashed him to the ground. We were all sitting in Jayaprataka Maharaj's room one night, reading Sri Chaitanya Charanamrit, the transcendental biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Abhimanyu Dasa, an English devotee who had been appointed head of security due to his military training as a commando in a British army, came running in with the alert that dacoits were coming to attack the temple. But Maharaj did not believe him. A little annoyed at being interrupted in the middle of our reading, he said, Abhimanyu, that's just your paranoia. But Abhimanyu was upset and argued his case. And finally, just to pacify him, Maharaj got up and said, okay, let's go and meet the dacoits. Sticks in hand, with Maharaj leading the way, we all walked to the main gate. And when we got there, we could see a crowd of people in the distance with burning torches coming our way. As they approached, however, we heard the shouts of Bolo Hari Hari Bol, the customary invocation of Lord's mercy while carrying a dead body. It was a funeral procession, judging from its size, for someone important. Jayapataka Maharaj did not say a thing. He just turned the strode back to his room, and the rest of us following behind. Maharaja was a natural reader, full of energy and working from morning till night. But we had a lot of fun together too. At one point, he received bows and arrows from America, and he used to practice archery in the garden in front of the Lotus building. He was an excellent marksman and hit the bullseye practically every time. He was an expert swimmer too, and he not only crossed the Ganga effortlessly, but on more than one occasion saved devotees who were drowning. And when there actually was a threat of attack from dacoits, Maharaj would be standing right in front to face them. We always felt well protected under his leadership. The Mayapur deities, Sri Sri Radha Madhava, were 18 inches tall and made of 88 auspicious metals. They had been personally installed by Srila Prabhupada. I began to develop a relationship with them, and whenever I could, I sat in front of them trying to appreciate their transcendental beauty. I was chanting in front of them one morning after breakfast when I was overtaken by a profound realization by chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I was actually communicating with Krishna, and he was listening. I moved closer to Sri Madhav, appreciating his features. All at once, I truly, fully knew that he was the supreme proprietor and controller, the supreme personality of Godhead. I had gained a rational understanding of this from my reading, but my new awareness was different and went beyond thought. It was a deep realization. Then it came to me that I could ask anything from him and that he would grant my request. Thoughts began to flash through my mind. What should I ask from him? Should I ask for wealth, position, recognition, and fame? I was entirely convinced that whatever I asked for, I would receive. But then I considered, if I die tomorrow, what will be the use of any of it? With great relief, I decided to ask for something that would be with me forever. I prayed, please allow me to become your devotee and remain engaged forever in your loving service. A profound tranquility washed over my heart, and I was suffused with an indescribable joy. I prostrated myself on the ground and lay there for a long time, filled with gratitude and love.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
So many of us, the Guru Maharaj is a new devotee, a new bhakta, and we can see that somebody who has a realization that he can ask anything. And then Guru Maharaj is asking, please allow me to become your devotee and remain engaged forever in your loving service. Whenever I read this sentence, I many times feel, when will I, speak like this spontaneously? So many things. So wonderful. Yes, Mataji. So next we have Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Anir Dyasa Bapu had also come to Mayapur, and my friendship with him continued to flourish. We took long walks and would sometimes go a kilometer up the Ganga and float back downstream with the current. We talked about various topics, but mainly was spiritual lives. He was from Los Angeles, and his father, like mine, had been in the film industry just in America. He too had been spiritually inclined from childhood, and in his late teens, he had come across the devotees and had been immediately attracted, especially after reading Srila Prabhupada's book. Soon thereafter, he had joined ISKCON and traveled to India to commit himself to the cause. He was extremely curious about Indian culture, for which he had a great appreciation, and would ask me many questions about my homeland. He liked to tell the others how he had known I would become a devotee from the first time we met, and I would tell them how he had immediately engaged me in cutting fruits for the deities, and that is the only due to that service that I had become a devotee at all. During breakfast one morning, Madhu Sevita announced that Srila Prabhupada had just arrived in Bombay. My heart leaped, and I ran to Bhavananda Maharaj and told him that I had to go there to see him. But Maharaj did not approve of the idea. Even if you go, he told me, you won't be able to get near him. No one knows you there. And besides, Srila Prabhupada's health is not good. He's hardly seeing anyone. Wait till he comes here. He will come soon, and you will have a lot of opportunities to see him. I accepted Maharaja's advice and tried to be patient. And one day we got the news that Prabhupada was going to Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, about 800 kilometers northwest, a 3-day bus ride. Guru Kripa Swami was going with his Namahata boys, and some of us from Mayapur, headed by Bhavananda Maharaj, would join them. I really wanted to go. Kumbh Mela, January 10 to January 18, 1977. Kumbh Mela, held in Allahabad every 12 years, and the world's largest gathering of humanity, attracting up to 100 million people to the confluence of Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati rivers. To attend, we had to be immunized against cholera and other contagious diseases, but my body reacted to the vaccination, and the day before our planned departure, I was still running a high fever. Bhavananda Maharaj did not think I should travel, but there was no way. I was going to miss the opportunity to meet Srila Prabhupada. And seeing my determination, Maharaja agreed. The next morning, medicated with Excedrin, I joined a group 30 devotees as we boarded a bus in Navadvipa, the town on the other side of the Ganga, and led by the lively Namahata devotees, we spent the 3-day ride absorbed in vibrant kirtan, laughter, and abundant prasad. Although I had a basic idea about Kumbh Mela, I decided to read more from Srila Prabhupada's book before going. Prabhupada had described the churning of milk ocean by the Devtas, demigods, and the Danavas, the demons, that led to the festival. The Devtas were cursed by Durvasa Muni, an extremely powerful mystic yogi, and having lost their power, they were defeated by the Danavs and had to flee their assigned abode, the heavenly kingdom. They approached Lord Brahma with their predicament, and Brahma, along with the other demigods, approached Lord Vishnu on the shore of the milk ocean, offered him prayers. The Lord appeared before them and advised them to negotiate a truce with the demons for the purpose of churning nectar from the milk ocean. According to his instructions, the demigods established peace with King Bali, the king of the demons, and proposed that they churn the milk ocean jointly to obtain the nectar which they would share. They decided to use Mandara mountain, a celestial mountain situated in the higher regions of the universe, as the churning rod, and requested the king of the serpents, Vasuki, to serve as a rope. The demigods and the demons tried as hard as they could to carry the mountain, but they could not take it very far. Being compassionate, the Lord appeared on his carrier Garuda, placed the mountain on Garud's back, and took it to the milk ocean. What the demigods and demons could not accomplish even together, the Lord's carrier Garud did easily alone.
Hare
The
Krishna.
demi-
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Thank you so much. Okay. Next, we have Chandan Paul Mataji. And devotees who are not read, please raise your hands so you can get the turn next. Yes, Mataji. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna. The demigods and demons then attempted to churn the milk ocean using Mandara mountain as the churning rod and Vasuki as the rope. The demons positioned themselves near the mouth of the great snake, the demigods at the tail. With great effort, they began pulling Vasuki in both directions. But since Mandara mountain was so heavy and was not supported by anything, it sank into the milk ocean. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then appeared as Lord Kurma, the Lord in the form of a tortoise, and supported Mandara mountain on his back. The first thing produced from the churning was a huge amount of deadly poison. The Prajapatis, the original progenitors of the universe, realizing the poison's danger to the entire creation, requested Lord Shiva to drink it. Lord Shiva gathered the devastating poison in his palms and drank it. He was not harmed, but his throat turned blue, which is how he got the name Nilakantha, the blue-throated one. A small quantity of the poison dropped from Lord Shiva's hands to the ground and was imbibed by some creatures, giving rise to venomous snakes, scorpions, toxic plants, and other poisonous things. As a further result of that churning, a Surabhi cow, the celestial horse, Uchar Rishrava, and the magnificent elephant Airavata appeared, as did the Kaustubha jewel and other auspicious objects. And then Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, appeared and accepted Lord Vishnu as her husband. Finally, Dhanvantari, an incarnation of the Lord, appeared with a pot of nectar. The demons immediately snatched the nectar and began to fight amongst themselves to be the first to drink it. During their struggle, some of the nectar spilled into 4 different places: Prayag, Haridwar, Nasik, and Ujjain. And in these 4 places, the nectar becomes available every 12 years at Kumbh Mela. During Kumbh Mela, it is said, the water from the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati turns to nectar, and one who bathes at their confluence at that time becomes free from the cycle of birth and death. Sadhus, saintly persons, and spiritual practitioners come from throughout India and all over the world. Yogis suspend their meditation and descend from their remote caves deep in the Himalayas. And I heard that Srila Prabhupada had said that inhabitants from the other planets also attend, hiding their identities and mingling with the crowd. Kumbh Mela always attracts millions of people, but that year it was a special Purna Kumbh Mela, when the pot of nectar becomes completely full, which occurs only once every 144 years. ISKCON had acquired a piece of land at the Kumbh Mela site, which stretched over many square miles, and erected tents for programs and accommodations. In other areas, yogis demonstrated their skills and achievements. One had himself locked in a trunk and buried for several days. His emergence unscathed created a huge sensation, but I was not interested. My purpose for coming was to meet my spiritual master. As soon as we arrived, I dropped my bag in our tent and ran to see Srila Prabhupada, who was staying in a large tent surrounded by corrugated tin fencing. When I tried to enter, however, a big-bodied Western devotee guarding the gate stopped me and told me to return in the evening when Srila Prabhupada would give darshan audience. Disappointed, I headed back. But on the way, I ran into Bhavananda Maharaj carrying a basket of vegetables he had brought from Mayapur. Come, he said, I'm going to see Srila Prabhupada. Excited that I'd be able to see Prabhupada after all, I joined him. When we got to the gate, the guard, recognizing Maharaj, offered his obeisances and stepped aside. As we approached the tent, I could just barely see Srila Prabhupada inside, sitting on the floor behind a desk. The light was dim, so I could not see clearly, but even a glimpse of Prabhupada's saffron form was enough to fill my heart with joy. I had been waiting for this moment for years and felt that I had achieved the ultimate goal of my life. Tears sprang from my eyes as I fell flat on the ground and offered my obeisances. When I rose, dazed and overwhelmed, I moved to go inside. But Rameshwar Swami, Prabhupada's secretary, stopped me and said that Srila Prabhupada was taking his lunch and that I should not enter. My reverie broken, I snapped back to the reality of my surroundings, both disappointed and regretful. Why did I offer obeisances from outside? I chided myself. Why had I not entered with Bhavananda Maharaj and bowed down inside? It would have been fine and no one would have stopped me. Again, I turned back to my tent with a heavy heart. I was starting to realize that it was not so easy to get close to Srila Prabhupada. He had thousands of disciples all over the world, and many were highly qualified and had been serving him for years. Who was I compared to them? I had only just joined and had hardly rendered any service. Accepting the reality of my situation, I decided not to try to approach Prabhupada directly. I would admire him, worship him, and serve him from a distance. That afternoon, Sridhar Swami, a Canadian sannyasi, gathered together some devotees to go out and distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. The festival was a great venue. We were surrounded by millions of pilgrims, all inclined to spiritual life, and we had learned about the potency of Prabhupada's books, how a person could derive spiritual benefit just by coming in contact with them. I had experienced their effect. Reading the nectar of devotion had awakened me to spiritual reality and brought me into the association of the devotees and to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. Jayapataka Swami had often led us out from Mayapur to distribute books in towns nearby. And sometimes we would go out for weeks in the Mercedes-Benz van that had been brought from Germany for that purpose. A half dozen of us would drive to nearby towns, distribute books throughout the day, and invite people to evening programs at which Jayapataka Maharaj would give class. His Bengali was not fluent, but people were still impressed to see a Westerner speak on Bhagavata philosophy. There was only one book in Bengali, Gitar Gan, Srila Prabhupada's poetic rendition of the Bhagavad Gita. So in Mayapur, we were limited in what we could distribute. But at the Kumbh Mela, we also had books in Hindi and English. The response was amazing. Most of the pilgrims were quite poor, but many bought books and almost all responded favorably.
Hare Krishna.
I became
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Gaurav Prabhu. And those who want to read, can please raise your hands. Those who are not read can raise their hand. Go ahead, Gaurav Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. I became so absorbed distributing books that I almost forgot that Srila Prabhupada was going to give darshana in the evening. When I suddenly remembered and ran back to his tent, it was totally packed. There must have been 1,000 people in the tent, but I managed to squeeze in between the last row and the back wall. Just the sight of Srila Prabhupada filled me with incredible joy, and all I could hear was the insistent pounding of my heart, which felt like it would burst from my chest. My body began trembling and tears clouded my vision. I had never felt anything like it. I was totally ecstatic. When I came back to my senses, I saw Srila Prabhupada just as he had appeared in my dream. After I had been reading the Nectar of Devotion, he was as brilliant as the sun, sitting on the Vyasasana that looked like a throne. He sat upright in the lotus position with a flower garland around his neck. His chin was slightly raised as he looked over the crowd, a transcendental aristocrat, fully confident in the knowledge of Krishna that he was about to share. People were asking Srila Prabhupada, and he answered them all in Hindi with the ease of confidence of authority. Some of the questions were challenging and even unpleasant. One respectable looking middle-aged man asked, "Why are you building all these new temples when there are so many old temples needing repair?" Rather than answering him directly, Prabhupada asked the man, "Who is that lady sitting next to you?" "She is my wife." "Why did you get married?" The man paused, considering how to respond. Prabhupada continued, "Putrarthe kriyate bharya." One accepts a wife in order to have children. But why do you want to have children when there are so many orphan children loitering in the streets? Just as you want to have your own children, the devotees of the Lord want to build temples for him in order to show him their love. The man had nothing to say, nothing more to say. One young man whose dress identified him as coming from Bharata Sevashrama Sangha, a Bengali group involved in social welfare activities, who helped when there was a flood, famine, or earthquake, asked Srila Prabhupada what he was doing to benefit the public. He asked his question in Bengali, but Prabhupada answered in Hindi, stating that true welfare activity, the real way to benefit people, was to give them Krishna consciousness. Providing people food and shelter and helping them in distress were temporary fixes that would not solve their true dilemma. The real problem, he said, would be solved only when they developed a loving relationship with Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The man asked, when people are in distress, shouldn't one go to help them? Srila Prabhupada responded that welfare help, though good, was temporary. All the people's problem would remain as long as the people remain attached to material nature. Only surrendering to Krishna could permanently free people from all material sufferings by freeing them from their material bondage and elevating them to the spiritual world, which is full of endless joy. But the man could not understand Prabhupada's words of wisdom. I asked you the question in Bengali, he challenged. Why are you answering in Hindi when you are yourself a Bengali? Srila Prabhupada raised his voice. Whether Bengali or Hindi, that doesn't matter, he declared. What really matters is whether or not you understand what I am saying. The man seemed devastated, and I doubted he would ever come anywhere near ISKCON again. But many years later, after Prabhupada's disappearance, I actually saw him in Mayapur. He had become a devotee. My time at the Kumbh Mela was going wonderfully, and I was feeling uplifted. 300 or so devotees had come from all over the world, and I was relishing their association. One morning, when I was brushing my teeth in the washroom, a young American devotee next to me gave me a sweet smile and asked, who I was. I introduced myself and told him that I was from Mayapur. His name, he said gently, was Giriraj Dasa. He had come from Bombay. Just from that first encounter, I felt a deep appreciation for this kind devotee. Later, I learned that he was the president of the Bombay temple. He had come from a wealthy family. His father was a high court judge in Chicago. He had met Srila Prabhupada in 1969 when he was studying at Brandeis University near Boston and had joined ISKCON almost immediately and dedicated himself to Prabhupada's service. He had come to India and was doing his utmost to spread the movement, tolerating all kinds of hardships. His father had tried to bring him back into the fold, but none of his attempts, not even an offer of $1 million, had succeeded. Due to Giriraj Prabhu's sincerity and dedication, he became very dear to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada treated him with great affection. Every day, the devotees rose early to worship the Mangalarati, chant japa together, and then go to Srila Prabhupada's tent for Guru Puja. A devotee was leading a lively kirtan one morning during Guru Puja, and the rest of us were jumping up and down in ecstasy. Then he started to sing, Bhaja Hare Krishna, and all of a sudden Prabhupada shouted to stop the kirtan. Everyone froze. The tent went silent. Where did you learn this? Bhaja Hare Krishna? Prabhupada roared. The devotee was speechless with shock and embarrassment. Prabhupada continued. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra must be chanted just as it is. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nothing should be added to it, and nothing should be subtracted. After Guru Puja, Srila Prabhupada would give class on Srimad Bhagavatam. He held us all in rapt attention, every word bringing new realizations as its spiritual reality were manifest right before our eyes. After class, we would sit over breakfast and discuss our understanding of what we had heard. Then we would go distribute books, and in the evening, we would return to Prabhupada's tent for his darshan. I would just sit in the back, ecstatic and taking in the class and his presence. On the day before one of the most auspicious days for taking bath, when the three rivers turned to nectar, Srila Prabhupada expressed his desire to bath in the Triveni. He did not want to go into the crowd. However, he requested the devotees to go at the most auspicious hour and return with water so that he could bath with it the following day. Two devotees managed to reach the Triveni and return with a bucket of water. The next morning, during Srila Prabhupada's darshana, when a senior devotee asked how his bath had been, Prabhupada thought for a moment and then replied that it was like any bath in any water from the tap. Even though many... Sorry, yes, Prabhu? Should I stop?
No, go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah. Even though many millions of people went to the Triveni during Kumbh Mela to take their auspicious bath, he explained, any service that anyone rendered anywhere in the world for the pleasure of Krishna conscious Krishna was more auspicious.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much.
Lord Prabhu. Okay, next we have Amit Prabhu, Amit Sharma Prabhu. Go ahead.
The whole atmosphere in Kumbh Mela was ecstatic, but there was one problem. The place was so crowded and noisy, even at night, that Srila Prabhupada could not work on his Srimad Bhagavatam translation and commentary. So one morning he called his senior disciples and told them that he had decided to leave. By that time, I had accepted that I could not be physically close to Prabhupada, so I was not too disappointed. I had resolved to be content to serve him from a distance in the mood of separation. Whatever he wanted would be all right with me. I would keep on serving him no matter what. After Bhagavatam class that day, Bhavanand Maharaj told me, Srila Prabhupada is going to leave Kumbh Mela tonight. Yes, I replied, I heard, but I was shocked by what he said next. A small group of devotees will be traveling with him, and you have been included in the team. I could not believe my ears. I was so excited and happy. I practically started to dance. The thought that I would be traveling on the same train with Srila Prabhupada made me feel like the most fortunate person in the world. All I could do was thank Maharaj again and again. We left that night in the first class carriage hooked uh, onto a train bound to Calcutta. The entire car was for Srila Prabhupada and his anchor entourage for 14 devotees, of whom I was one. Hundreds of devotees came to the station to see Prabhupada off, waving and offering obeisances. I stood at the carriage door, waving back, relishing my mood, my good fortune. Once the train started, we all took rest. The next morning, after bathing, I was chanting in my compartment when Bhavananand Maharaj came in and said, "Come, I'll take you to Srila Prabhupada." I had been dying to meet Prabhupada ever since uh, arriving in Mayapur, but now, as Maharaj presented me with the immediate opportunity, I felt unqualified. I was afraid that he would look right through me into my heart and see all the dirt and all the sinful activities that I had committed. He would reject me, refuse to give me his shelter. I had heard that there were devotees who had been waiting for years to be initiated by him but had not yet been accepted. Bhavanand seemed to know exactly what I was feeling. He just grabbed my hands, dragged me along the corridor, opened the Prabhupada's door, and pushed me inside. I fell flat on the floor, offering my obeisance. When I got up, Srila Prabhupada was looking at me, smiling sweetly, and asked me to sit next to him. On the seat facing him were Jayapataka Swami, Rameshwar Maharaj, and Bhavananand. Abhi Ramadas, the Calcutta temple president, was sitting on the floor. I hesitated to accept Prabhupada's offer, saying that I too would sit on the floor, but he insisted, "No, you sit here." So I folded a corner of the blanket, spread over the seat, and sat on its very edge. Then, after some initial exchanges, the Prabhupada gave me a direct instruction: "You translate my books into Bengali." My heart was jumping with joy, but I was uncertain. Srila Prabhupada said, uh, I said, "I do not really have experience in translating from English to Bengali. Will I be able to do it properly?" "Just do it," he assured me. "Practice makes a man perfect." When I left the room, I had to pinch myself to make sure I was not dreaming. I could not believe my good fortune. At our very first meeting, Srila Prabhupada had given me this incredible service. I knew that he considered the publication and distribution of his books to be of the utmost importance, and I had heard that because many of them had also been presented in Bengali by our previous Acharya, he was especially particular about their Bengali translation. I just kept on praying to Krishna that I could fulfill my responsibility and execute his instructions properly.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay. Neha Jindal Mataji, go ahead.
Prabhuji, I have last time also when we read this, I wanted to ask one question. How did Srila Prabhupada knew on his first visit, first meeting only that he should ask Bhakti Chari Swami Maharaj to translate him when he didn't even knew about Maharaj? Like first time they are meeting and he's
Yes,
giving.
Mataji. So these are, you see, when pure devotees, they take birth, then they may be eternal associates of the Lord, but they forget. But when But Prabhupada, being the Acharya, uh, they know who's who. So many times Prabhupada said that many of the devotees who came to help him were sent by, his Guru Maharaj. And similarly, for many devotees, it is said that they are eternal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Prabhupada, like that, Mataji. So he told Guru Maharaj like that. He also told Gaur Gobind Maharaj also. He met first time and told him, Maharaj, that you translate my books in Odia. So that's why these many devotees are held in very high respect, because just in one meeting, and we can see the background, how the whole meeting is being organized, and how incredible it looks, Mataji, from Guru Maharaj's side. What is happening? He can't meet, then he meets, and then he realize he can't take darshan, and then out of blue, Bhavananda Maharaj, accepts, takes him also in the train, and in the first meeting itself, Srila Prabhupada told him to translate the books in Bengali, and especially Bengali because all our acharyas, Mataji, have written, all the tikas are in Bengali, like Guru Maharaj is saying. So for Prabhupada, it was very important that Bengali should be done perfectly, and you can understand. See, without knowing him and without having any background, he just told him, "You do this." So these are the transcendental pastimes, Mataji. By such instances, one can see these are all transcendental personalities. They are coming to help in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. They are not ordinary human beings like us. Similarly, we have Pankaj Jhangri Prabhu and Jananivas Prabhu in Mayapur. And when he was there in Mayapur, then devotees were asking, who will be the pujari, who will be the pujari? And these two brothers were coming in Western dress, Mataji. They just passed, they were just going. And Prabhupada pointed at them, they will be the pujaris. And they, I think for next 15, 20 years, they never left Mayapur. They didn't come there to become a pujari, but Prabhupada just pointed at them. Similarly, for Radhanath Maharaj also, like he pointed him to come on the dais on, I think in Bombay it was, from a big, where thousands of people were there. Prabhupada just pointed at Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, and told him to come and sit, on the dais with other devotees, like that. So, so from such subtle, dealings, we can understand who's coming from where and how fortunate we are to have association of such devotees.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
We have 6 o'clock. Okay. So our time is up. So thank you so very much. I hope all of you heard the wonderful lecture, the presentation given by Her Grace Devi Shakti Mataji today morning. I think we can't see it enough. I didn't have the heart to hear it again. But those who have not heard it, please hear that wonderful presentation Devi Shakti Mataji made. And just hearing from her will purify. She refused to give darshan. She didn't switch on her video. But main thing is to have the connection with the Vani. And I think it is one of the best, lectures about Guru Maharaj I have ever heard in my life. And she condensed the whole ocean of mercy in 1 hour time. A very unique lecture. So those who have not heard it, I will request, it is there on the BCS group, or you can ask Ronnie Prabhu, he will send it to you. So please hear the lecture, and we'll end the class now. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Name. Namaste Saraswate Deva Gauravani Pracharini. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashat Deshikari. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.